Welcome to The Observable Unknown, where science meets the unexplained. I'm Dr. Juan Carlos Rey of crowscupboard.com, and after 2 decades of working at the intersection of comparative religious studies, grief counseling, anthropology, quantum mechanics, and consciousness studies, I've discovered that our most profound human experiences often exist in the space between what we can prove and what we can perceive. In this podcast, we'll explore the measurable influences of immeasurable forces, those hidden factors that shape our reality, but often escape our traditional scientific frameworks. From the latest research in consciousness studies to the ancient wisdom that's now finding validation in neuroscience and quantum physics, we're here to bridge the gap between academic rigor and spiritual insight. Whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or simply curious about the deeper mechanics of human experience, you're in the right place. Together, we'll examine the evidence, challenge our assumptions, and explore what happens when we dare to look beyond the obvious. Today, we welcome a guest whose life's work bridges two worlds, the world of narrative and image, and the world of the unseen. Mary Madeiras is a 3-time Emmy Award-winning television director who shaped the visual storytelling of some of the most watched daytime dramas in America, including General Hospital and Another World, and whose broadcast work has spanned news, live events, and network production at CBS, NBC, ABC, and PBS. And yet, in the midst of a celebrated career, something else began calling. A whisper, a presence, a remembrance. That whisper led her into the Akashic Records, the energetic archive of the soul's origin and unfolding. It opened a doorway, not just for her, but for thousands of others. Today, Mary is an advanced Akashic Records practitioner who has opened the records for individuals, organizations, and creative leaders around the world, offering guidance that is not predictive, but transformative. Guidance that helps us remember what we came here to do and who we truly are. Her new book, The Akashic Way, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records, is part memoir, part luminous transmission, a book that does not merely tell a story, but initiates one. So, without any further ado, let's join the conversation. Mary, this chance to connect feels like an absolute gift. You, I have to ask, had a thriving career in television directing. What was the turning point, the moment when the Akashic Records stopped being an idea and became a lived path?
It's a great question. Well, there were two things for me. I, I do have to say that preceding the two things that happened for me was this, yes, thriving career in television. I was a TV director, and I always felt it was a very subtle feeling that there was something else, more. There was something more, not an instead, but something more. And so, that being said, I was brought to, it was actually through a psychic reading that I first learned about the Akashic Records.
Mhm.
And it was a being that was seen by the psychic with me. And the being expressed that he was guarding my Akashic Records. And so I went and looked them up, went to the internet as we all do. And it wasn't like, bong, bells going off, but there was something very, maybe mildly familiar to me. And so I then eventually was guided to discover a book. And the book was a really good book, and it was about opening your records by Linda Howe. And when I first followed her, there's a sacred prayer we use. When I followed her guidance in the book to open my records, um, I the messages that came through, they were blocks of thought that were not mine. I knew they were not mine, and they were very profound. So I would write them down and I would share them with my wife, Christine. And I would ask her if she thought maybe this was my imagination. As a director, I had quite an imagination. And she said, no, you don't even speak this way. So that was the first thing. I was just like, wow. The second turning point was when I first began, and this is even bigger, when I first began to do Akashic readings for clients, for people. And I witnessed and I experienced the amazing, powerful shifts that people were having during those readings. That was when I knew for sure that this was part of my own soul's path revealing itself to me. It just was amazing.
Hmm.
So those were two, that the second one really solidified it for me because I know I'm here to help people see their own light. I've always known that since I was a kid. So,
So, what did it feel like in your body the first time, physically, when you were accessing the record? What did the sensation come across as?
interesting, so subtle that just an awareness that thoughts are coming in. And the thing about accessing, at least the way I access the records, is that there's a prayer that I say that puts me, I'll just say it raises my vibration and puts me in a space where I like to say my ego is not present anymore. So I don't have judgment. I just am present. And
Hmm.
it's very subtle. It's a higher vibrational state, but it's not like, heavy duty meditating and where you disappear and you don't know where you are, but it's good and you come back. Well, it's never like that. It's as if I just gently slip out of a third dimensional reality, but I'm still present. I'm still using my mind, or I should say the divine realm is using my mind because I'm asking that that's what happens, using the way I speak, my mind, my heart, my imagination, for the highest good of the person that I'm reading. And it just flows. And very often I don't remember a lot about people's readings. Sometimes they'll ask me later, you remember when the record said this or that? And I have to ask them to remind me, which for me shows me even more that I'm me, Mary Medeiros. I'm not my human self only, in these readings. I'm making myself available as maybe a sieve or a way that it flows through. And it's just very subtle.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, for listeners new to this work, in your own words, what are the Akashic records? How can you describe them without any metaphor?
Yeah, without metaphor, that's a that's a good one since it's described so much like that. Well, I think the closest it comes to, I like to look at linear thinkers and science these days because science says, wait a minute, there's this thing we can't see, and I think they're coming closer together. So it is a quantum realm,
Hmm.
and we now know about quantum physics, and quantum physics are measurable now. So the idea is that there is this field, the quantum field, and this field is a blank slate until the actions of humans, their experiences, their thoughts, um, become, from the beginning of time, I should say, they become imprinted into this quantum realm, into this quantum field. And the field it's nonlinear. It's it's interesting. Dr. Joe Dispenza speaks about the field of possibilities, and it is a realm that he encourages his students, clients, whatever, to go to. It's a blank place where everything exists. And there's a saying that comes from the divine realm, which is that it's like everything exists all at once, and that is quantum.
Hmm.
It's like a hologram. And so any piece of the hologram contains the whole picture. So now just going to a human being, each one of us, we go through life, the idea is that the soul incarnates, reincarnates, and each lifetime that soul comes into by choice to impact that field, to impact the planet, the earth, humanity in a certain way. And I like to refer to it as like an overarching theme that a soul chooses. So the soul doesn't choose to come in and murder someone and go to jail. The soul chooses a path of showing what love is about, maybe because, well, we can go into that another time, but that scenario does wind up in love. Um, and so this realm has etched into it. It's a blueprint of every soul. And we can, when we access that, I use the name, the full name of the person, so that if it's a Susan Smith and I just do Susan, there are many Susans on the earth, but I'm going to get Susan, specifically Susan Smith, in my prayer. And I will, with Susan's permission, open her records. I begin to hear, especially when she begins to speak, her imprints, basically, what's already etched in her records that I might add are part of her soul's choice. So it's not a realm that is up and out there telling us what to do. Um, in fact, if that ever happened in a reading, I would know I was not in the Akashic records. So it's an experiential body of knowledge, basically, and it exists in the divine quantum realm.
Hmm. So, if you are entering this divine quantum realm, which you is the you who goes? Is it a version of yourself that you're familiar with that you interact with others using? Or is it a version of yourself that is somehow different, something private, maybe a version of yourself that you don't necessarily bring out to interact with individuals other than maybe your clients? Is it an alternate form of self, an alternate form of mind, like a different kind of ego or a different kind of superego that you would apply?
What it is I believe it is my higher self, and my higher self is uh, made up of love, like universal love.
Hmm.
And so my higher self, that's part of the prayer. Because see, I believe that there is a creator force, universe, we can call it many things, God, source. I believe that. I know it. Actually, I don't even believe it. I know it. And so knowing that is actually a vibration unto itself. And my inner being, my higher self, knows that. And so I ride on the that part. I bring my higher self to the space, or I just show up as that. Best
Hmm.
way to. But see, the goal is for all of us, we hope, to just run around in life, interacting with each other as our higher selves, which is what the records show us. So the more that I do it, the more I am walking around in life more like that, which we all have access to. So it is not, I'm not bringing some part of myself that is not somewhere else or that I only save for the records or for the clients. I just bring fully who I am. And who I am is I have always been a lover of people. And when I was little, I was actually made fun of for that because I trusted people when I was little, and my family said I was pie in the sky. But then I grew up and realized, oh my gosh, I think I was right. We are all wonderful, and I ride on that. So I just bring that to the space.
Fantastic. You touched on something pretty interesting just a moment ago, saying that when we are in that state or in that quantum field for extended periods of time, we tend to be more like that in our day to day life. And you had said, I believe, that that's what the records want. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Because that's how we're designed. The design of humanity is that we are high vibrational beings. We were born, we come in as balls of light, is what I've been actually shown. Um, and then, and then we become, we enter third dimension, we come in as we have the human experience, which presents challenges and at times. And that ball of light that we are, that pure positive essence, is always a part of us. And I think what has happened, just my learning throughout life, is that we often are sometimes pushed, well, or it can it can look like it's getting covered up. We can get challenged by things that are not of that. I'll say that. And that's where the ego comes in. But when that happens, we want to remember who we are, and that's why the records are about remembering. When we remember who we are, then we are in that higher vibrational space all the time. And it's a space that is very much grounded, and it just feels right. Best way to describe it. Things feel easier. That's another clue. When life is easier, we're most likely expressing that ball of light that we are.
Mm.
We have grown up learning, a lot of us have been learning that, no pain, no gain.
Hmm.
And that could not be farther from the truth from what I have been hearing from the records. It's not about you have to have the pain in order to have a gain. We already come in with gain. We already have everything we need. Um, and so we have chosen a human experience. And what I have learned is that that human experience that we all have chosen has a common theme, which is to have the human experience in order to remember that we are the light again, and that the remembering feeds back into source itself. And that's a big one. That's a big one to talk about. But it's like, what is the purpose of all of this? What is the purpose of source? It's for expansion, and source is love. So when we are more fully in our own light that we are all of, and when we express that more throughout our lifetime, we are in turn feeding back into the source, which is love itself. It's expansion. And that's what I understand is the purpose of life itself.
Is the expansion. Okay.
Yes.
It's fantastic. Your book weaves personal experience with what you call transmissions, messages that feel both intimate and universal. How did you learn to trust the voice that comes through or the messaging that comes through?
Yeah. So the messaging that comes through, it's steeped in a love. This is something I recognize, not recognized, but I experienced right away, that it is steeped in this love that I had not and have not experienced in my everyday life, I'll say. I call it universal love or God love. I don't know how many people can say that they've really experienced source or God loving them, feeling it mirror back to them. Um, when I'm working in the Akashic Records, I never have doubt about the voice that I'm calling it a voice, but the essence that I'm experiencing. And the prayer that I use to open the record sets up a space for me where I don't experience judgment or doubt. So the information simply flows, but it feels very loving. And as it comes through, that's what the client is experiencing. It moves on the spoken word, and the divine moves on the spoken word. And actually, we can see that evidenced throughout history. There are sacred texts, not just the Bible, which is the one we all kind of know, but if you look at even the scrolls or sacred texts from different cultures, when you're in proximity to them, you can feel something or you hold them.
Mhm.
When we could say, well, what is that? An accident? No, that is a vibration, and it is a divine, I think it's the divinity itself as a vibration that we can feel.
Hmm.
Sacred spaces and places on the planet have that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, experiencing the numinous through contact with the thing clearly is one
Hmm.
of the signals, as you said, the messaging that you get when you're communicating with the record. One of the central ideas in your book is that nothing in our past is wasted. Even trauma becomes an asset. How do the records reveal that specifically?
Well, this is a very common one, and that comes up because a lot of people who come to their records are looking for clarity, or they have blocks that are in the way of their being more fully themselves. And so what's interesting about the divine realm, I should say, through the records is that they're not teachy or preachy. They encourage questions from those of us who are in our records, in my case, my clients, and those questions open up um, clarity and healing. So when the client is answering their own questions that are being presented to me from their own records, they start to experience expansion, things begin to transform. And it's not, well, anyway, that's what happens. So um, the idea from the Akashic records is that there are never mistakes. there's some pretty um, interesting concepts that have come through the years, which is one of the reasons I began to write and wrote this book, that may make people go, wait a minute, what? So, for example, there are never mistakes. There are only choices that we make lifetime after lifetime. And
Mm,
when we look at these choices, whether we experienced trauma, it's in the form of trauma or harm, we can actually look at the energy of those events, not the events themselves. And this is where the records are a little different from, let's say, therapy or traditional therapies. So we know that energy never dies. It morphs, it moves about. And energy isn't positive or negative, it's just simply energy. So if we take a trauma event, let's say someone who had harm, could be from in a past life or it could be from childhood, we can actually look, the records encourage us to look at the energy and have the client identify the energy of those events, not the events themselves, because the records are very clear about saying that divine is not mitigating or lessening any impact or any negative feelings or that we might have had or things that we went through that were harmful. But when we look at the energy, which is separate in a sense from the event itself,
mm,
we can actually mine, M-I-N-E, mine the energy of those experiences and use that energy in our present lives. And I can give you an example.
mhm,
So if a person was, in their words, traumatized in a past life, or yeah, we can look at the lens, we can look through the lens of that person's trauma through the Akashic records. Their records may ask them to identify the energy of the trauma. This is important. So the energy might be something like, let's say somebody was emotionally shut down through the actual traumatic events. Then we can talk about the power behind the shutdown. Because when somebody has been, whatever it is, if somebody has, God forbid, been raped or harmed in some way, there's a power, something took their power away and was more powerful than them. So this is the important part of this. So their records may ask them to identify the energy of the trauma. The energy might be, okay, so let's say they were shut down. Then we can talk about the power. That's pretty powerful stuff. Now we have an opportunity to grab that power, the power, not the trauma. Now it's disconnected from the trauma, and we can channel it into what we are passionate about in this life, in our now time.
mm,
And another example is I actually had a client who is a shaman, and he expressed in his record reading his remorse about some time in his life when he was angry at everybody and everything. He shared that he used to scream at people on the street. Um, he hated people, but he had remorse about it. So the records asked him what it felt like, and he said it was beyond powerful. I was so powerful that I could just, kill someone basically. And he thought it was something to get rid of, to will away. Well, the records suggested what it might feel like if he channeled that power, not the old expression of it, but the energy of that power right into his shaman self today. And he sat up and just was like, whoa, oh my gosh, like it just went through him. That's how our trauma or other aspects of our past that we've come to believe are bad can become very useful. They can become very powerful. And the records also convey like this idea, why would we want to get rid of something that's part of ourselves? So everything has a role in the unfolding of our soul's chosen path.
mm. That's beautiful. You also write that the records don't heal us. They instead help us to remember how to allow healing. What does allowing look like in practice?
Well, in practice, the allowing of the healing, and actually I have to also say that the records emphasize that none of us need healing. It's more like a realignment, maybe. But anyway, for the sake of talking about healing, because everyone will recognize healing, it happens in a natural flow when we're in our Akashic records. We don't have to do anything. We simply we begin throughout a session to remember more of who we are. And the remembering is it's like an inner shift. It comes through people saying, wow, that's right. I used to love this, but I went away from it. And the records will ask questions about whatever it was they thought they went away from. And then we'll look at the nuances of that they thought they lost. And as the parts of themselves that they thought were either bad or not needed or were hidden, as they emerge or reemerge, they begin to recognize alignment happens, actually, is what happens. So we don't have to do anything. In a reading, the other thing I want to mention is that during these readings, there's a divine essence that washes over the entire reading. It's the best way I can describe it. It moves through the dialogue, as I said. It's very subtle. Um, it's like I almost can't explain it, and I don't want to, but as my client and I discuss their questions or concerns, and I am conveying the thoughts from their own records, as they, the client, expand on that, a transformation begins to happen. It's like a live expansion occurs. They begin to discover or understand something about themselves, which then takes them somewhere else. And then it takes them right to the center of who they are. And that becomes the validation of something deep that they already knew and may have forgotten. That's
Mm.
what always happens.
Mm.
And it's pretty amazing. And I think there's an aspect to this, which is the power of the divine that is hard to identify. It has, I'll just say I'm in awe of it. I'm in awe of the power of divine.
Mm. The records describe the ego not as an enemy, but as a structure built around forgetting. How do we begin to meet the ego without fighting it?
Well, there's a lot that the records talk about with the ego. The ego, they say, is not real. It's manufactured. And I also have come to understand that the ego began with narcissist who saw his own image. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's two of me. Oh, there's a there and over there and me and me. And that kind of uh, led us to where we are today, into a collective, what Eckhart Tolle refers to as the collective ego. But the ego, we don't need to fight something that actually is not real. So it's an illusion. The ego is an illusion, and it thinks it's relevant. So here's how it forms. And this is why we don't want, there's nothing to fight actually, but it forms itself when what I'm learning is when actions take place, when people take actions that are not of love. They're choosing, and the reason they're choosing not love is because they don't know their love.
Mm.
So if we don't know we're love, then we're going to move about life in a sense in an unloving way and taking unloving actions. So those non-love, those undivine actions have energy, and that energy lands somewhere, it feeds into itself. And then it builds, and more people who are not knowing that they are beautiful beings and are of love will feed into it and feed into it and feed into it, and it grows. And it takes on an essence that the best way to describe it is it's been shown to me as like a balloon that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and there's more air being fed into it, and the air are the unloving acts. And then if it pops, there's really nothing there. Yeah, there was air there, but there's really nothing inside the balloon. And that's kind of how the ego is. So it continues to grow and it fears its own demise. And Eckhart Tolle has spoken of this. They bring up Eckhart Tolle all the time in the Akashic Records and refer to him as an ascended master. Um, but the ego fears its demise. So it takes on an essence. But what is real between the love essence and the ego essence is the love essence is what's real.
Mm.
But anyway, so the ego essence fears that it will go away. So it's kind of tricky. It feeds off of more of itself. And it also can even, it's in my book that it can behave as if it is love, but it's really not. And we see that in life where people are kind of disguised as love, but then we find out they weren't. That most likely is the ego. So we don't need to fight the ego. All we need to do is create in our lives continually from love, connect with the earth and create from love. And then there is no fight, not necessary.
Hmm, that's tremendous. In your own journey, what was the most surprising message you ever received in your records? Something that challenged or redirected you?
Well, I learned in my work when I was studying the Akashic Records through the Center of Akashic Studies, we were opening our records over and over because it was about us being familiar with the Akashic Records and learning about ourselves and learning about our own past wounds and things like that. So I learned that one of my past lives, I was scorned and had scorned others. That was really challenging to hear. But when this information comes through, you know it's true. You resonate on some level. It's not the mind. My mind was like, ugh, but my being was like, oh yeah, there was a time where that's what was happening. So the energy of those past life experiences, the experience of being scorned and having scorned others, it actually, the energy of that informs how I live in the world today. And I got to that by being in the records and sort of chewing on that, I'll say, chewing in quotes on that with my own records about that lifetime. Today, I can detect scorn energy before it manifests. And I have a relentless passion for underdogs in life.
Hmm.
It's huge for me. And I never understood why it meant so much to me. And now I know why, because I actually experienced both sides of it in a past life. And then the second surprising message that I got was when I was still directing, television directing, when I was overlapping with beginning to work in the records. I was just learning about the records. So I knew myself as a director, and my records in one of my readings imparted, Mary, your records show you as a writer. And I was kind of like arguing with my records, which I find very funny today. Like I was saying, no, I'm not. I'm a director. And my record said, the thoughts were coming through me. No, your records, it's etched in your records that you're a writer. And when you sort of surrender to it or allow it really, it will be so easy that you will not even believe it. And we will be by your side, we meaning the light energies of my records. And so what I did with that is I walked around with that and I thought, I don't know, like it felt funny and I wasn't sure outside of my records. And then I don't know, one day I made the choice, I'm just going to let go of it all, not think about it. No sooner had that happened, I was offered a paid job writing a screenplay. And I laughed because, and it was easy. And so and I'm writing now and that's an example of how the records can help us realign with what is part of our soul's chosen path. And so here I am today as a writer.
That's fantastic. You've touched a couple of times on referencing memories from previous lives, experiences from previous lifetimes.
Hmm.
Is there clarity when you're visiting a past life tableau? Is there imagery? Is there a name that gets used? Is there a set of sensory experiences that you can tie back to present experiences? Anything that gives you a real idea of who you were and what you were doing?
Very interesting. Some people, when they're working in the records, actually really see images and see things. I usually hear thoughts, however, or I feel energy. Um, in terms of past lives, what I'm getting more of with my clients, and it could be because maybe I'm evolving as a practitioner, and I'm trying to be open to, wherever this is leading me, is that sometimes I will see I won't see time periods because there is no time. In divine, there's no time. So I don't see you were in the 1800s and this and that. But I will be given, like specifics, like you were the wife of a pharaoh to somebody recently. And she would say, this woman said, I had a past life reading. That's exactly what came up. So there are specific things. It is whatever is needed in the moment of those readings that comes through. So for me in the scorn times, I also was a cloistered nun. That I totally can see. I know
Hmm.
it, I feel it. It's like I could close my eyes and I'm there. The scorn part was I didn't have a judgment about it because I was in my own records, and there is no judgment in the records. But it was, wow, I know why I know it. It's like that. It's like you go, wow, I know why I know this. And it makes sense. And so I wasn't seeing specifics, um, but sometimes I will. That's the best way I can describe it. I'm beginning to
Sometimes you do,
see
yeah.
more with my more visual depictions of somebody's past life. Names, I'm not usually given names, but I'm giving, like, I'm shown that person. Sometimes there'll be a different sex. So if it's a woman I'm reading and I'll see you are a man, you're a man, I'm seeing a man, you know, with, I don't know, running through the woods doing this or that. So I do see things. And when that happens, I pretty much 100% of the time, I don't know why I'm getting what I'm getting. But that person will say, wow, that's very interesting because, and then it opens something else up.
Hmm. That's very interesting. I know you said that you don't always see, sometimes you do. What about other experiences? Do you have the sensation of a fragrance, of a taste, of maybe your departure in a previous life cycle?
Oh no, I've never seen that. I've never seen that. Um, it was only once recently did I get an aroma. That was the first time. And the thing is, I think I know we all have this capability, I'll say, of tapping into multi dimensions, other sides of third dimension, we'll call it that, including the past, because the past and present and future apparently are all kind of vibrating at the same time in quotes. So we all have that. And I think for me, the reason that it's not happening all the time could be because I'm not asking for it. It also may be that I'm not evolved enough to be hearing, seeing, smelling, or that I don't need that for the work that I'm doing. Because some
Hmm.
people they'll just really get aromas and they're right there. Um, and that doesn't mean that if you're not getting it, that it doesn't mean you're there. It just means that's that's not what's needed right now. I'll say that.
Hmm.
I think we all have different assets and abilities and talents, but I think they all, when applied in a divine way, lead to the same place.
Hmm. That's fantastic. Your book includes messages regarding collective thresholds like war, planetary instability, the future of humanity. What are the records showing you about where we are right now?
Well, they're showing a lot of things. It depends on what I'm asking about also. Um, and the other thing I want to say is that when I'm in my own records and I'm asking about something that has to do with maybe my own life, this is why I did the book. What would happen was they would expand on something and talk about humanity. And I was like, wow, this is something else now. So it usually is shown, what's shown to me relates to most likely what needs to be seen, heard, and felt by humanity in the moment. That's the sense I have. So the biggest thing that I hear, well, first of all, where we are, we're at a pivotal point. The one big message I keep getting is they show me like the numbers 911, that we're in a light war of nine, there's a 911 call coming from divine to all light warriors and people to accept being a warrior of light. And I've been, let's see, I've been doing this since about 2008, and I wasn't hearing that years ago, but I'm hearing it more now. So it's not anything to be afraid of. There is no fear, but the light is, we're being asked to step into the grandest, greatest expansion of light ever in the
Mm.
history of the world. That's what I keep hearing. And therefore, we have to, it's important, not have to, but it's important for us, each of us, to get into a place of balance and groundedness in the light so that where an image I get is, I guess Archangel Michael has been referred to as having a golden sword. So it's like having some golden sword and you're just sort of slashing through energy. You're slashing through unloving energy. And we are seeing evidence of this, by the way, today, when you see people who, there are some things happening on the streets in the United States, we'll just say that. And the records don't get political. If they did, I'd know I wasn't in divine. But there, when somebody's being hurt on the street and people are just running to help, that's that's warrior. They don't even think to themselves, well, I better not do this because it's a man in a uniform and I might get
Hmm.
hurt or whatever. They don't think that. They're running on love. So that's one thing, the 911 call for light warriors, and all of us to step into that if we can. We have to be in balance, though. We must be balanced. The biggest other biggest idea is that we do not need duality. This is another big idea. We don't need duality to experience light and happiness, and we don't need the shadow to see the light. We've been, I don't know, maybe trained a little bit in that. We just need love, and that's it. Unity consciousness is what it's all about. And we are going towards unity consciousness, whether we like it or not. It's the design of the human race that we are heading into unity consciousness. The planet, Gaia, is expanding. She's fine. There are people saying we're killing her, we're beating her up. Well, we're not being kind to her, that's true. But that's coming from us. And Gaia is fine. If we're not here as a humanity, she will be. So I hear things like that. Um, and that we're also returning as a humanity to how we were initially created as beings of light and love. Another message I keep getting is an encouragement for us to revisit the teachings of ancient wisdom keepers, the indigenous especially, that they hold the wisdom of the past, which is going to be our future. So it's a very exciting time right now. It feels a little bit clunky,
Hmm.
but there's an old saying, the light always wins, and it will. And I believe that.
When you mention ancient wisdom keepers, are there specific cultures that get highlighted in or by the records?
No, I think the key to that is ancient. So there could be, we could go back in time. Hildegard von Bingen, in the 1100s, keep going. Jesus, obviously, Jesus was a wisdom keeper. So, but here's the thing, I think what's important is that we are really in the teachings of those wisdom keepers. So not the reinterpretations of them. And that's up to us to make sure that we're doing that. But I do feel like indigenous, that's the word indigenous comes up a lot. So it's strongly indigenous.
Hmm.
But no, I don't see any part of the world or any specific culture. But it's like the original peoples of the original areas, that's what I see.
That feeling, that theme. Hmm. So you've opened the records for animals, locations, even corporations. What changes when we view institutions as living energetic beings?
Well, the idea is that they already are energetic beings. So the idea of an institution or organization is that it began as an essence, kind of floating around the ethers, okay? It was already an essence, an idea. We can call it an idea. Same thing with inventions. And so that essence has um, an identity in a sense, and it looks for its match. So I love the example. I use the example of um, J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. The idea is that Harry Potter itself, because Harry Potter, of course, is a cast of characters and and stories and things like that in its 3D form, but it really began as an essence, and it has an endless life to it, doesn't it? It has a very powerful, this is filled with messaging. So the idea is that it was an essence to begin with, floating around. It's out there, and it just identifies a match to its energy, and it was in the form of um, J.K. Rowling. And so it swoops in. Now, this can happen. So it's co-creation, organizations. So somebody may have an idea, and they're sitting there and they're going, okay, I have this idea for, I don't know, a particular, maybe Apple, maybe Steve Jobs, this is what happened. But I have this idea for a supercomputer, a da da da. It will do this and it'll change the way we live. And that idea, the idea from the records is that no idea was just created by the human being by themselves. So that's the premise here. And so I enjoy this because what then happens is the person sits there and goes, wait a minute, I think this. Then they start working it out, it formulates, it grows, and then it becomes an institution or an organization. So that organization is actually the energetic coming together of the essence of the person, I'll call them the CEO for now,
Mm-hmm.
and the original essence of it itself and its purpose. And it has an energy to it. So I have worked with CEOs who were not sure about taking their company in a new direction or in a different direction. One particular case, I had a client, huge billion-dollar company, and she was getting ready to sell it, and she was upset about selling it. She knew she had to, or felt she had to. She was just grieving before she was even putting it out there for sale. And the energy, I could feel a different energy come in the reading. It wasn't hers. And I used the name of the organization to open up the records of the organization, the essence of it. And it came through, and I could say here now, it had like a personality, and it spoke to her and she recognized it. And so basically she was speaking with the energy of her own organization that she had co-created. So you're co-creating with non-physical, which is really cool. And it basically said to her, we have we have a lot more to do, whether I'm called this name or not. So just pick a number, sell it, move on, because you and I, the essence of it, will be continuing to create expansive things on the planet. And she just completely eased around the whole thing. So it was like I can feel and hear a different voice in a sense. That's not mine, and it's not the voice of the CEO. It's different, the best way I can describe it. And the client recognizes it.
Hmm. As an
Yeah. And
intelligence that she's interacted with before.
yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes. Which is the original intelligence that came in to begin with as they co-created whatever it became.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's wonderful. So, if someone listening feels the whisper, the pull that you experienced, how can they begin? What's the first step in moving towards this work?
So there are a couple ways it can happen. So, all right, if they feel the whisper, in a sense, um, my experience was that well, I was kind of hit over the head with it in a sense because I was brought to it through that psychic reading. It's almost like the records reached out, and then once I visited the records, I went, whoa, I know this. But generally what happens is people are drawn to their own records or to the idea of the records. So if they feel that, I would I would encourage them to research it on the internet, go to the internet, and you'll feel the spark of familiarity. That's the
Hmm.
first thing that's going to happen. You just know. And then one thing I do recommend, even with my clients who want to begin opening their records, is one of the book that triggered it for me was How to Read Your Akashic Records by Linda Howe. And I wound up studying at her center. because it is her journey, and she just eases you into, if you're already feeling familiar and you're hearing a whisper, it is how it happened for her as well. It's a wonderful book, really is. So, How to Read the Akashic Records by Linda Howe. And I just encourage people, we all can do this. If you're feeling it, just keep surrounding yourself by anything that has to do with the Akashic Records, and you'll be guided to exactly the right place.
That's wonderful. Speaking of books, your book, The Akashic Way, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records, is out now. Are there any specific places you would recommend individuals find it? Would you like to send them to a specific bookseller? Is it something that they can purchase online?
Yeah, that you can get it on Amazon. So it's there. It launched a few days ago, actually. So just go to Amazon and type in the Akashic Way, and it will be there. It's in Kindle and in paperback.
It's fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people needed to hear this today. So I personally will carry your words with me long after this is over. Thank you so much for sitting with me today, Mary. It's been a delight. It really has
Thank
been.
you so much. And thank you for what you do. You are really special. Just want
I
to say that.
appreciate that. Thank you so much, Mary. Take care of yourself, take care of your wife, and hopefully I will have you on in the future.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'd like to thank Mary for being with us today. Her work reminds us that the soul is not distant, symbolic, or abstract. It is immediate, interior, and profoundly intimate. It reminds us that every moment of confusion, resistance, longing, or ache is not a detour, but a doorway. And it reminds us, perhaps most importantly, that we are not here to become something. We are here to remember what has always been true. Her book is The Akashic Way, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records, and you can learn more at theakashikway.com. Thank you again, Mary, and to our listeners, as always, stay with the mystery. Just try not to solve it too quickly.